So once I really owned that, everything changed. Everything started to change. Um, do I wish that I didn't have to go through a divorce to find it? I really wish I didn't have to go through a divorce to find it. But that was the process for me. When we as a man take the lead, we are the leaders, we are the head of the house. If we take that lead and make the first step to do this, that builds security for her, because now she's seeing he's willing to make the first move.
We're back for more marriage goodness today, and there's plenty more of that to come. So here we go. This is the show dedicated to raising up the next generation of men of faith and character. My name is Mark Stanifer. Welcome to the Next Men Up,
part of the NRT Podcast Network.
Well, hey guys, welcome back once again to the Next Man Up and to the community that is raising up healthy and godly men. So good, as always, to have you with us for another episode. You know this, my name is Mark, and I'm excited to be with you once again. Today we're going to pick up where we left off last time on the topic of marriage and this idea of how you can divorce-proof your marriage. And I know it sounds like a strong claim, and I imagine in one way or another you have been touched by divorce. But if you listened to the first half, you know that the key that we're honing in on here in these two episodes is really about communicating well, in particular inside of your marriage. In the second half of this conversation around improving your communication, we're going to get real specific on whose responsibility it is and how you as the man and as the husband can take the lead and initiate the improving of communication for yourself and then the spillover into your marriage. And I also ask Eric a question around what is it that we as dads can be teaching our boys to prepare them for marriage, their own marriage down the road. And so all of that is to come. To help us do that is Eric Terry. Let me introduce him again to you. He's on a mission to help build stronger communication in families, relationships, and communities. He's done a number of different things professionally in his past, from nonprofit organizations to over 2 decades of working in some aspect of ministry. He's done motivational speaking. He's written a book that we'll get into in this half called Real Talk, The Making of a Man, which it's really about his story and what he's learned along the way. And ultimately, Eric positions himself as a communication coach because here's what he believes. If we can repair how we communicate, we can repair the world. And so my guest today, once again, is Eric Terry. He's the one that's going to help us get deeper into these topics through his own story and his wisdom. And so let's do it. Let's get right into the second part of this conversation with Eric. Here we go. So there's a phrase that's come to mind that I used to use quite frequently. And I must admit that my application of this phrase my use of this phrase was rather strategic. It was in those moments where I felt like, hey, I'm doing it right and I'm doing it well and I got it all figured out. And you're challenging me here to realize that this is a phrase that just keeps on giving, right? It's, but the phrase is this: if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. And I'm sure it's not original to me, but it was one of those things that I could just whip out in the right moment and be like, oh yeah, this is what's needed here. But again, just realizing that the application is much broader than the limited application in which I was using it. It gets to communicating with our spouse, communicating with that most important relationship that we have on this planet, right? And I'm going to take you back to where you started, or early on in this conversation. It's a man up moment.
It really is.
Right? Like that's the phrase that I was thinking. Sometimes we hear that in the context of just be stronger, suppress your emotions, get out there, right? Rub some dirt on it, you're fine. Man up, right? In a more negative or hyper masculine context, that's often used. But in this moment, it really is a man up moment to be like, look yourself in the eye, take ownership of your responses to the events, to the situation, to the circumstances, to what she's saying.
Right.
And bring into the situation what's needed in order to change your own behavior and begin to change the environment around. Anyway, that's where my mind was going as you were talking.
That's it. I mean, that's, and that's really, I actually used to use that phrase a lot when I talked about my journey with that, because I just had to man up. I mean, there were just so many things that I was ignoring about my behavior. I was ignoring about how I spoke. And here's the funny part. My love language is words of affirmation. So to realize here I was, although that may not have been her love language, you still need to be able to control yourself verbally to maintain some kind of order. But that was huge. That was huge for me. So once I really owned that, everything changed. Everything started to change. Do I wish that I didn't have to go through a divorce to find it? I really wish I didn't have to go through a divorce to find it.
Sure.
But that was the process for me.
So I've been doing some writing recently on strength. And one of the things that we talk about here often is just setting the bar higher and not settling for something less than or a component of authentic and healthy and godly manhood, but striving for the ideal, that best example. And what I hear you talking about is something that takes an incredible amount of strength and courage to do.
Absolutely.
Like we may want the other person to go first, or we may think that it's the other person's fault or responsibility. It's all on them. But when you think about what it means to be a man and to be a strong man, and get the image of Arnold as Mr. Universe out of your mind as the only way to understand what it means to be a strong man.
Strong, right.
Then you can come into this topic that we're having, this conversation that we're having around this topic, and realize, boy, this is another way to define strength in manhood, strength in husbandhood, and being strong for that most important relationship, and all of the ripple effect in the family that comes from that relationship. It strikes me as another way to say, this is what it means to be strong, and men can do it if they're willing to make the effort.
Absolutely, man. And listen, Mark, it's so important. And this is what men have to understand. A woman's number one need is security. That's on every level, whether it's financial, emotional, mental. I mean, it's spiritual. It's on every level. When we as a man take the lead, we are the leaders, we are the head of the house. If we take that lead and make the first step to do this, that builds security for her, because now she's seeing he's willing to make the first move. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest complaints I hear from most wives is that he's always waiting on me. He's always waiting on me to make a decision. It's always on me to do this. When we take the initiative and be intentional, my teacher, the therapist who certified me is also my pastor. One of the things that he said that just rocked my world, he said, having good intentions is great, but being intentional is better. And so I put that to the husbands that I deal with and said, listen, you've got to be intentional with this. You've got to make a point to do this so that she sees you taking those first steps. When we use that courage to step out and do this first, I guarantee you, for most couples, for most people, that woman is going to see that. And she's going to see, especially if he's never taken the lead on anything, especially if he struggles to give, that advice and be first in it. When she sees him doing that and sees him making those changes, that's going to drive that change. That's what drives the change. It's where we have to start with us and just being intentional and making that first step.
So take it a step further, Eric, because I'm picturing somebody's listening and they're like, yeah, man, that sounds great, but you don't know my fill in the blank, my wife, my situation, my background. Right. Like there are objections to taking a more active approach in the relationship. And I know there are reasons why husbands, why guys take a more passive approach. What would you say to that guy? Or are the reasons why to leave that passive position and take a more active position and lead in the relationship like you were talking about? Why do it? What's the compelling reason to disrupt the status quo, so to speak?
It's all about what you want from that marriage. If you want it to continue the way it is, by all means, keep doing what you've been doing. What you say earlier, you got to do something different. If you want to see that change, and I think for the first step, go to her and let her know, I've been really thinking about some things. I'm trying to work on myself because there's some stuff about me that I'm doing that I'm not comfortable with anymore. And I feel like I need to do better by you with this. And so when you notice me working on something, just, kind of acknowledge it and leave it there. Now, once you begin making those changes and doing those things, listen, these are the things that women are waiting for us to do. These are the things that women are waiting on the man to make a decision, to take a first step. If there's somebody who needs coaching, I can tell you this, I've had more couples that the wife was completely shocked when the husband said, maybe we should see a marriage coach.
Mm-hmm. Because she thought it would never get to that.
Thought it would never get to that.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, that suggestion is brought up by the wife.
Yeah. So
when that man makes that suggestion, you see their eyes go bing, because he sees there's some issues. And I had one guy, and I fell in love with him. He told his wife, he said, I don't know. He said, I've never seen a good marriage, and I want one. That's what I want for us. So the only way I can get that is if I find somebody who can help me with the tools to get that. So I want to see a marriage coach or see a therapist or whatever. And that wife just began to cry because she never thought he would acknowledge his part and never thought he would seek out counsel to address it. And in most cases, that's guys. We don't want to do that.
That's right.
We don't want to talk to anybody because we don't want people in our business. I told one guy, I said, that's all well and good. I understand. I said, but you do realize that when the moment you get divorced, you'll find out who reads the newspaper. Mm. Because it will be in the newspaper that you're divorced. And he said, huh? He didn't even know that they posted it. I said, that's public record. And when I showed it to him in that the newspaper, he thought, I said, now you talk about people being in your business. Is this what you want?
Right.
Or would you rather have them say, man, they were having issues, but they got help and they're doing good? Don't give them something to talk about.
That's right.
But it's really about us taking that lead and, again, scooting past the emotion, scooting past all this stuff, and just owning it and saying, this is the help we need. Let's see who we can find.
So take this angle for me, if you would.
Mm-hmm.
For much of our audience, they are fathers as well. And part of the challenge of this platform is to encourage dads to lean into understanding what healthy and godly manhood is and passing that on in an intentional way to their boys. When it comes to marriage and it comes to the romantic side of relationships, what would you tell that father is important in order to be able to pass on this, pass on the skills or the wisdom or the knowledge to his son, so that someday he can be the husband that he was called to be in that relationship?
Right. One of the things that my father did, and he still to this day, he does not shy away from, is their public affection in front of us. That was key. I remember as a kid saying, "Oh, get a room,"
Right. That's gross. I don't want to see that.
I don't want to see that. But I'm grateful for those moments because it showed me my parents truly care about each other.
Yeah.
Now you got to remember, I'm comparing this. The only comparison I have other than television shows are my friends' parents who are doing none of this. Most of them are arguing every time I see them. It's that kind of stuff. And so my brothers and I were real jaded because we thought every household looked like ours.
Well, of course. I think that's probably a common experience for kids growing up.
So when I started learning differently, I realized how blessed we were.
Yeah.
To be able to see the happiness and the joy, but it's allowing the kids to ask questions, to talk to them about what you're doing and why, because that's the only way they're going to be able to see that pattern or that map on how to walk this journey out. It's those little conversations about why mommy and daddy do things this way that a lot of times we try to avoid with our kids because, well, that's adult business. We can make it child friendly. We can put it on a child's level. We just have to be cautious with it because those very things that we refuse to discuss or talk about are going to be the things that they're going to struggle with in marriages later.
Mm. So the sooner and the more frequently we talk about them and model what healthy communication looks like at home, the better off the kids are going to be in understanding what's required in a relationship, what are the ingredients of a healthy relationship, and see it lived out at home so that they can take it into their relationships down the road.
Exactly. Because, I tell people all the time, we teach people how to love us. But if you don't know how to love yourself, you can't teach anybody how to love you. So if you don't have that guide with what is expected in a marriage, you kind of miss out on what it is you're truly needing. There was a guy that I grew up with. His parents fought constantly. His dad had several other women that he took care of and all this kind of crazy stuff. And he was abusive physically to the mom. And unfortunately, I watched this guy and his siblings. All of the men grew up and became their dad. All of the girls grew up and became their mom.
Wow.
And unfortunately, it took multiple marriages for some of them to begin to kind of break that generational thing. It's sad, but we truly do. We teach them. You're going to teach them something, whether it's intentional or not.
That's right.
So may as well be intentional about it and make sure that you're teaching them the right way. Because if all they see is daddy screaming and yelling at mommy, they're going to think that's okay.
Yeah.
And they're going to grow up thinking that's how you handle a relationship. When they do something to make you mad, you scream and yell. It's going to be, like I said, you're going to be that teacher, whether you realize it or not, whether you want to or not.
It's part of the job.
It's part of the job. So you may as well man up and just take ownership of that and help guide them in the right way so that you're not, repeating the cycle.
Yeah. They're going to learn one way or another. They're either going to learn from you, or they're going to learn from media, or they're going to learn from their friends. And yet us as fathers are the most influential men in the lives of our kids, and they will learn from us first, one way or the other.
One way or another. Because, and again, it's true, because our boys will learn what to do or what not to do in those situations, and our daughters will begin to look for men that do things like my daddy. That's
right.
So you got to be careful. A friend of mine posted in a group that I'm in and asked, and it's all fathers, and he said, would you allow your daughter to date a guy that was just like you? And almost every man in this post said, now, yes. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, no. Yeah. And these are the guys who matured. They grew up. They manned up. They owned it.
Yeah.
So they've let go of the childish stuff that they were doing, things like that. So now they will be fine with their daughters marrying somebody like them. But when you think about the younger version of them, they're like, oh, no.
Yep.
I know what I was like,
Which is both a warning and an opportunity, right?
Absolutely.
There is hope. There is the ability to change. We can look ourselves in the mirror and say, no more. I will do different. I choose to do and be different. But therein lies the challenge. Without that man up mirror moment, without that moment, the opportunity is missed.
Yeah, true.
So you've alluded a couple of times to the work that you're doing that to help couples, to help husbands and wives. Talk a little bit about that and how somebody might be able to get some more information or get in contact with you if they're interested in what you're doing.
I get a lot of contacts from people on social media. I have my personal page and a fan page under Eric A. Terry Sr. Really what it entails is just sitting down and kind of, my first conversation with couples normally is just trying to figure out, okay, what types of issues are you dealing with? Got to start there. And once we do that, it's about really trying to dig a little deeper. And I tell couples, it's so funny. They look at me sometimes and they think what you're saying sounds so easy. Mm. And it's funny because I tell them it is. The hard part is actually doing it.
Yeah, it's in the execution.
It's in the execution. But they can also always reach out to me on my Facebook page. I get tons of messages. I have coached couples in Puerto Rico. I've coached couples in Jamaica. Just because social media has allowed me that ability to reach out and talk to people across the world, which has been great. And in those situations, it's really about giving the couples, those guides and I don't do a long term, you guys need 90 sessions and all, it's really just a few things, because once you take those first few steps in correcting the communication, a lot of the other behaviors go away. So they kind of manage themselves. But again, they can always reach out to me on my Facebook page or my Instagram, anywhere on social media. I'm there. And I'd be glad to sit down and see what we can do for them.
And what's that handle on social media?
Eric A. Terry Sr.
Got it.
And the surname on it is the communication coach. And Mark, I also have a book that was published back in 2014. I'm way behind on the next one. But it's literally my journey. You can find the book on Amazon. It's at Barnes and Nobles. The name of it is Real Talk, The Making of a Man. And that book to this day is still selling across the world. And I am so grateful.
Wow. Because
I'm hearing from men telling me that my situation or my journey sounds a lot like what they went through. And it's just as transparent as I could possibly get to let people see the failures and downfalls and the pitfalls that I went through, and focusing on my part in it and really trying to address it. But each chapter just kind of goes to the next level of you can see the growth. And that was something I really wanted to do to just share with the world, because I felt like transparency wins. Transparency cures, I believe. So when we're transparent with people, we can be honest with them. We can tell the truth. And like you said, that's hard to do sometimes when you're talking about yourself.
Yeah, man.
It's really hard to do. So I didn't just change it in my head. I actually put it out there for the world to read. So that book is also available.
And so, again, what was the name of the book?
It's called Real Talk, The Making of a Man.
Great. Well, dude, thank you for bringing it today and for sharing this wisdom. It's interesting because what you're suggesting really boils down to a simple concept, which is communication.
Yeah.
But simple isn't necessarily easy in terms of implementation, which therein lies the challenge, right?
That's the challenge.
If you can get the communication down, then you can not just avoid the divorce, but really begin to thrive. And I like how you didn't quite say it this way, but here's how I heard it. When couples learn how to communicate, then they can work themselves through any of the issues that come up along the way that would have been derailers or argument producers in the past. Now they just become a way to implement this tool, work on this tool of communication, and work through it together.
Yeah. It's that simple, but like you said, the execution is what makes it difficult. And here's the biggest problem, Mark. Especially when it comes to men. Most men aren't communicators. We don't know how to. That's where we struggle. I'm grateful that my parents created a talker. So I learned in a really young age to listen to people. And in those situations, I found strangers walking up to me, starting to tell me personal stuff. And I'm going, why are you telling me this?
Right.
And I would start talking back, giving them my opinion or whatever. And in the middle of it, they would even stop and say, I don't know why I'm telling you this.
Yep.
But they continue to talk. And because of that, I think in my life, it's made trying to change those moments and use that as a tool in my relationships, not just in my friendships, not just in people in passing.
Yep.
In doing that, it allowed me to build that communication piece. And once I started doing the coaching and realized, wait a minute, that's all this is.
That's right.
It's just fixing the communication.
Yeah.
But it's made all the difference in the world. It's worth putting yourself in a vulnerable place to use it to better your marriage.
Well said.
It's worth it.
Well said. Well, once again, Eric, thank you for joining the show today and for sharing your story, your experience, your wisdom. I know that someone, I know this was for somebody. I don't know who, but I know it was for somebody. And I trust that that what you shared will be valuable and will make an impact. So, man, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Hey, listen, anytime, man. I love doing this. This is the first podcast I've done in a while. I have not done one of these in a pretty good while. So, man, when I got the invite, I was thrilled. I was thrilled. So this is perfect. Anytime you want to take another stab at marriage, I'm right here for it.
All right. Well, I will keep that door open and look you up down the road.
Absolutely.
Well, there you go, guys. The answer to the question, how do you divorce-proof your marriage? It's learn to communicate well. Eric said something toward the end of this episode that I think is worth highlighting again. He says this: it's worth it to put yourself in a vulnerable place to better your marriage. I don't know how these episodes about marriage find you. Maybe in a good place. As I said before, maybe your marriage is rocking, or maybe your marriage is on the rocks, or maybe it's just somewhere in between. I don't know. But is it worth it to you to put yourself in a place of vulnerability, to take some initiative, to lead in this space of improving communication in order to better your marriage? That's a question that only you can answer. How much is it worth it to you to take the lead, to put yourself in a place of vulnerability in order to improve your marriage? Well, I hope besides that you got some bit of wisdom, some nuggets from this episode. I certainly enjoyed my conversation with Eric, and I anticipate that we will have him back for another run at this topic down the road. But for now, we'll close it up here with the challenge for you to take that next best step to make your marriage better, wherever it is today. The challenge to take the next best step to make it better. All right, guys, as always, if you have feedback, questions, suggestions for us, you can hit us up at feedback@thenextmanup.com. You can find us on Facebook. We also have a private group on Facebook for dads. If you're interested in being a part of that, just message us and we'll get you included into that group as well. Lots of different ways to connect with us. We always enjoy hearing from you and connecting with you, the community that's out there helping to raise up the next generation of healthy and godly men. All right, guys, we'll call it here. Thanks once again for being with us. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. Until then, adios. Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.